Tell him the baby might not even be his." The words didn't just echo, they detonated. Plates stilled midair, forks froze, and every pair of eyes at the table snapped toward me like I was the last piece of a puzzle. No one wanted to solve. I didn't react. Not immediately. Instead, I watched her. My girlfriend, the woman who had held my hand just hours earlier, whispering promises about a future we were supposedly building together. Her face had gone pale, lips slightly parted, but she said nothing. Not to deny it. Not to defend me. Just silence. That silence was louder than the accusation. My chest tightened, but I kept my expression neutral, almost bored. Years of learning how to stay composed finally had a purpose. Around us, her family erupted. Questions. Accusations, confusion, but I heard none of it clearly, because in that moment, I wasn't angry. I was calculating. I've always been the quiet one. The man people assume is easy to read, because he doesn't speak much. In reality, silence has always been my advantage. While others fill the room with noise, I notice everything. The pauses, the contradictions, the things people try to hide between words. I met her 2 years ago, at a time when my life was finally steady. I had built everything carefully. My work, my reputation, my boundaries. She was different, or at least she seemed that way. Warm, affectionate, just vulnerable enough to make me lower my guard. I don't fall easily, but when I do, I commit fully. And I did, with her. Looking back, there were signs. Small inconsistencies in her stories. Late replies that didn't quite add up. Moments where her affection felt rehearsed instead of real. But I ignored them, convincing myself that trust meant not questioning everything. Her family never took me seriously either. To them, I was just the calm guy. The one who wouldn't push back, wouldn't create problems. They mistook my restraint for weakness. What none of them understood was simple. I don't react quickly. I respond precisely. It didn't start with that night. It never does. It was the small things, the kind people dismiss because they're easy to explain away. A message she'd flip her phone over to hide just for a second too long. A name that came up once, then never again. Like it had been quietly erased. When I asked, she'd smile, brush it off, and somehow make me feel like I was overthinking. At family dinners, the tone was always polite, but edged. Her sister would make little jokes about modern relationships, glancing at me as if I wouldn't catch the implication. Her mother once asked with a careful smile if I was ready for responsibility, the kind that lingers in the air longer than it should. And she never defended me, not once. She would squeeze my hand under the table, a silent request to stay calm, to let it pass, as if peace was something I owed them. There were nights she'd go quiet, distant, her eyes somewhere else entirely. When I'd ask what was wrong, she'd say, "Nothing." But her tone felt rehearsed, like a line delivered too many times. I noticed everything. I just didn't interrupt the pattern. The accusation at the table wasn't the beginning. It was the confirmation. What changed me wasn't what her sister said. It was what she didn't. The next morning I woke before sunrise, the room still carrying the quiet weight of everything left unsaid. She was beside me, asleep, as if nothing had shifted. For a moment I studied her face, searching for something, guilt, fear. Anything that proved last night had meant something to her. There was nothing, just calm. That was the moment it settled. Not anger, not heartbreak, clarity. I replayed everything in my head. The inconsistencies, the silences. The way every doubt I had ever swallowed suddenly aligned into something undeniable. Trust isn't broken in one moment. It erodes quietly until there's nothing left to stand on. I got out of bed without waking her and made one call. No confrontation, no dramatic scene. Just a measured conversation with my lawyer, outlining exactly what I needed. By noon, the DNA test kit was already on its way to her door. No accusations, no arguments, just truth, delivered in a box she couldn't ignore. I didn't move emotionally, I moved methodically. By the time she started calling, I had already outlined everything with my lawyer. Not just the test, but the sequence. Documentation, timestamps, consent protocols, every step handled cleanly without room for argument. If the child was mine, I'd take responsibility fully, legally, without hesitation. If not, I would walk away just as cleanly. No drama, no lingering ties. I gathered what I needed quietly. Screenshots of conversations she thought I'd forgotten. Dates that didn't align with what she had told me. Nothing explosive on its own, but together they formed a pattern. Enough to protect myself if this turned into something public or complicated. At work, I maintained routine. Meetings, emails, deadlines, unchanged. Control isn't just about actions. It's about consistency. People underestimate how powerful normalcy can be when everything underneath it is shifting. When the delivery confirmation came through, I didn't open her messages, not yet, because this wasn't about proving her wrong in a moment. It was about creating a situation where the truth would speak for itself clearly, legally, and without me needing to raise my voice once. The package arrived just after noon. I knew because she stopped calling. Silence this time came from her side. An hour later, my phone lit up again. Missed calls stacking one after another. Messages coming in too fast to read without opening them. I didn't need to. I already knew the tone. Panic has a rhythm to it. Urgent, repetitive, unfiltered. By evening, she showed up at my door. No makeup, eyes red, hands trembling just enough to betray her. I opened the door, but I didn't step aside. "It's not what you think," she said quickly, like she had rehearsed it on the way over. "We don't need to do this test." "I know, it's yours." I leaned against the frame, calm, steady. "Then the test confirms that." She hesitated. Just for a second, but that second stretched long enough to say everything she wasn't. Her voice dropped, softer now. "Why are you doing this?" I held her gaze unshaken. "Because truth doesn't panic." The hallway fell quiet after that. No shouting, no scene, just the weight of a decision. She could no longer avoid, and a future. She could no longer control. Word spread the way it always does. Quietly at first, then all at once. Her family stopped calling me entirely. The same people who once filled rooms, with subtle jabs and half smiles, suddenly had nothing to say. Silence, it turns out, feels very different when you're on the receiving end of it. A mutual friend reached out, careful with his words, asking if everything was okay. I told him the truth didn't need commentary. After that, even he kept his distance. At work, nothing changed, and that was the point. My reputation stayed intact because I never let emotion bleed into places it didn't belong. Control preserved everything that mattered. She, on the other hand, unraveled in fragments. Messages shifted from defensive to pleading, from explanations to apologies that never quite addressed the core issue. It wasn't the test that broke her. It was the certainty that I wasn't going to argue, chase, or negotiate, because this wasn't just about a child. It was about trust, identity, and self-respect. Why should anyone care? Because sooner or later, everyone faces a moment where silence is mistaken for weakness, and has to decide whether to stay quiet, or let the truth speak louder than anything they could say. The results came in a few days later. I didn't rush to open them. I made coffee, sat by the window, and let the morning settle the way it always does. Quiet, predictable, honest. When I finally read the report, it confirmed what I had already accepted before the envelope was even sealed. And strangely, there was no surge of emotion, no anger, no relief, just a steady sense of closure, like a door clicking shut exactly the way it was supposed to. I sent one message, short, clear, final. No blame, no questions, no space left open. Then I blocked her number, not out of bitterness, but out of discipline. Some chapters don't need revisiting once they've told you everything. In the weeks that followed, life didn't transform overnight. It stabilized. My routines held, my focus sharpened, and the noise that once surrounded me faded into something distant and irrelevant. I trusted myself more, not my instincts alone, but my patience, my restraint. Because in the end, I didn't win by exposing her. I won by not losing myself. And sometimes the quietest endings echo the longest,